All right. Hello.
All right. Back again. Back again. All right.
Insomnia Night. How you doing tonight, man?
Yeah, welcome, man.
All right, you guys ready for this?
I would say so.
We have a very interesting topic to talk about tonight, and very relative as well.
Indeed.
Considering it goes right to the heart of everything that we're doing.
All right. Well, welcome to the update log, episode 8. Thank you guys for joining us, as usual, Wednesdays. Today, as Greg said, we are tucking into a very unique topic, but definitely on brand with what we kind of have going on, and it's gonna be an interesting one. A little bit of a departure from what we've been doing, but not by much. So tonight's episode is actually going to be on more analog games, board games, tabletop games, um, things that you don't necessarily need a screen for anymore. Let's see. But as always, I would like to check in with you guys, check in with the audience, check in with Greg and Matt. How you guys doing today?
I've just been up to the usual, trying to get my college work done. Just the usual grind.
The usual stuff. I feel you.
Usual grind. Fantastic. I'm good, man. Looking forward to the conversation tonight. A lot of things going on, and we've been working diligently on our own projects, let alone streaming. But this is exciting stuff. A couple weeks in a row here where we're talking about things that really kind of get to the heart of what we do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, as for me, I've kind of been grinding away here, um, getting ready for tonight, and just thinking up further topics for us to discuss and get into. Um, but yeah. Anyway, so the topic of today is, like I said, it's a bit of a departure in terms of what we've been talking about the last 7 episodes, but not by much. And what I mean by that is there are going to be some overlaps in terms of topics of discussion, like design and design theories and practices. Talks of mechanics and things that we've kind of covered. But the point of view is now going to be from the direction of more analog games, or tabletop games, board games. Think shoots and ladders. Monopoly. Think Dungeons and Dragons, how it's meant to be played. Although I do not have any thing against virtual tabletops, as we do use them ourselves. D&D started around a table with pencil and paper. And that definitely has a different feel than playing it you know, on your computer or phone or iPad or whatever it is you got. Um, so the actual talk that we're gonna kind of be dissecting today, excuse me, was a talk by Sarah Ship, who is a freelance, I believe she's a freelance game designer, board game designer specifically. And she actually has a background in theater and whatnot. So she kind of looks at things from a pretty unique perspective. It was a talk that she did for the Game Developers Conference. Looks like it came out. This talk was in 2021. Yeah, it's 2021. There we go. They just posted it January of this year. So, but yeah, in it she discusses how a lot of the same design practices and points that are attributed to, or rather used in creation of video games and good video games, can be applied to board games. And at least for me, I didn't. I mean, I did, but I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I didn't immediately see. Okay, well, there are certain things that do transfer over quite a bit, actually. But the reason why, I guess, especially nowadays, video games have, I guess, I would say more impact, more, as she calls it, more resonance with players. You don't necessarily get with a board game. Like, you don't get to hear the antagonist, the main character. You don't get to hear the desperation in their voice if when they're in a kind of a do or die situation. You don't get to see that visually, so to speak. You don't get to see those I would argue familiar elements. But after listening to her talk, I realized I was wrong. There are plenty of elements that designers can and have put into various, analog games, board games. Obviously, taking those specific instances in context, that do evoke those similar emotions and reactions from the players. So that's what kind of we're going to be talking about today. So I guess let's just tuck right into it.
Yeah, I mean,
Matt, Greg, you guys anything to add to that, or did I do a pretty good introduction?
I'd say it's a fair introduction. I mean, obviously, there's quite a few elements that Sarah Shipp goes into in her GDC presentation, but I think you got kind of a rough definition of it down.
Yeah.
But I guess her main thing is talking about resonance, and her I guess like, what is resonance, at least in the way that she talks about it, is how well how well things make sense. She has a formula for it, so to speak. Like, resonance equals familiarity plus unexpectedness minus chaff, which is, to put it in simplicity's sake, like when you're designing a game, you want there to be some level of familiarity that people already kind of know, or things that just make sense, so that it's like people can instinctively just kind of pick up on it. This can come either through like familiar game design elements or just actions that make sense. Like say if you want to do damage to an opponent, you need to do some sort of action to attack them. I mean, that could be, when designing the game, you could design the context around that same mechanic differently, to where, like, want to do damage, eat a cherry, and that deals damage. That doesn't make sense. Like, a game could be built so that it could be that way, but that doesn't resonate with people. But if you attack a person and that deals damage, that makes sense to us.
Yeah.
So that's what the kind of familiarity bit is.
What if you don't like cherries?
Well, then I guess deal damage to yourself. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I guess you're not dealing damage.
Yeah, that damage just reflected back at you, man. Whoever said this game was fair. And so you combine that familiarity, the things that just make simple sense with unexpectedness. And this is the I guess this is essentially what makes the game unique and different from other things.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this would be, the twist that you put on the game, because a lot of games that are made, a lot of them will start like in the designer's mind. A lot of them can start like, what if I had this game but with this new thing here? And that's
Mhm.
kind of what that unexpectedness is. What is that bit that you weren't expecting to see that kind of brings that life in and makes things more fun?
Yeah. Yeah. And with that, kind of in mind, oftentimes that unique bit again will also make sense to the game and the situation that you're trying to build. It's again, it's not something that's going to come out of left field and not make sense. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not, because yes, you have plenty of games out there that have done that and they haven't done well. They haven't landed how they wanted to. But yeah, proper. Well, okay, maybe proper is too strong a word. But games that resonate, games that kind of land, that the emotion, the reaction that you want from the audience hits better, lands better, sticks better, as Sarah Ship says, sticks more when again you have those elements that it's familiar enough where, hey, I can kind of pick it up and run with it, but then you have that hook that makes sense first and foremost, and it's unique enough to kind of make you be like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And yeah, resonance, for her, it's the typical definition of resonance. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is the actual definition of resonance, more or less, is depth, shape, and clarity of theme. And what those will ultimately do, if done properly, are evocative, sticky, and memorable. Meaning, there's a clear theme, there's a clear uh, structure to the world, structure to the scenario that you're currently in, um, and it's something that you're going to remember, both mechanically, meaning you're going to remember the how to do X, how to do Y, how to attack, how to defend, how to harvest this thing over here. You're going to remember the mechanical aspects of the game that you're playing, you know, and you're going to remember the theme. You're going to remember the kind of what's the word, the goings on outside of the mechanical process. Like a perfect example is Monopoly. We all know as soon as we go, we go around go collect our $200. That's there. I mean, unless you go to jail, in which case you don't get your $200. You don't pass go. So that's kind of in line with what Sarah Ship was talking about when she is discussing resonance. Greg, you're suspiciously quiet.
I'm just listening.
I mean, come on, man. Monopoly's right up your alley. That's the game you grew up playing, right? I mean, that's a game I grew up playing
Monopoly,
too.
Stratego, Life,
No.
chess. I mean,
Life. Yeah, that's the rough game right there.
I
think we're all playing that game right now.
yeah. What was
I'm
it
not
you said?
winning, man.
Seriously,
Game's too hard. It's broken, man.
I didn't get the manual. I didn't get the guidebook. I'm struggling.
It's so real that you just spin the wheel and everything can fall apart. But no, I think when it comes to this, the resonance piece that we're talking about, very, very important in any type of game design, but especially in the tabletop world. Mechanics is where everything starts at when you begin, when it comes to any type of game design development, is developing out the mechanics of the game so that you understand how actions work, how things work for the players. All the way from the simple board games where, yeah, you're going to roll dice and then this is what the dice mean. Or you're going to, draw a card. That's a really simple piece to it. The simple games like just rolling dice or playing a card game, all the way up to, the new version of those things, Magic the Gathering. And there's a lot of actual board games that have gone to a card mechanic now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because of the popularity of that, and people enjoy it because it adds in, there's several aspects to it. One is that you can build your own team in a sense, so you're kind of creating your own game within the game. You're telling your story. But the thing that really makes these games stick is being able to the resonance piece, which is really creating an environment, including the mechanics, the theme, the timing, all of it, right through to where your player can be engaged and feel like they can resonate with the world. They can understand what's going on and feel like they can tell their story as they're playing this game, or whatever their headcanon is. And that's, there's a lot of really good games out there that do that, especially I think some of the newer tabletop games that are out. And I'm not discounting any of the older board games or anything like that. But I think that has become such a focus now for creating good games, the theme aspect of it, because that's really what people want. They want to be able to, tell their own story in essence through the game. Or maybe it's multiple stories. It's all part of that creation process where when you engage with something, in TTRPGs especially, when you engage with a character, when you create a character to play the game, sometimes it's a very small amount, and some people really, really go into depth and detail and write out a huge backstory, and they create this whole, this is the reason why this person is the way they are, and how I play them, and this is their family, and this is how this worked, and but then other times people really just want kind of a shallow version where, this is my character, this is the basics to why I act the way I do, why I do the things that I do, and they just let the story develop from there. And a really well designed game will provide that theme, that storyline, where you can act that out given through the mechanics of the game and be able to tell your own story, and your own story can kind of fit, as a piece of the puzzle into the lore of the game, so to speak. And that's definitely one piece there that I think we get a little bit carried away with, that lore piece to games, because a lot of, and I find this especially when it comes to, I'm sorry, I relate back to the video game industry for a second here, but a lot of the video game pieces that are out there, because they, for one thing, the game changes over time, so then you end up with this choppy lore where, this version says things go that way, and this version says something a little different, and then by the time you get to, 8 or 9, then suddenly you're trying to tie all this junk together,
Yep.
Where you have, I'm going to say, for the most case, tabletop games, TTRPGs, not the older games. I mean, if you look at like D&D has a very sordid lore all the way through it. There's a lot of things that are consistent, but the mechanics of the game have changed over time. So it makes it kind of, vague and foggy what is actually happening. But some of the newer games that I've looked at, up to and including the Cyberpunk universe, one that I'm looking at right now that I've really seriously been considering presenting or putting together a cast for, is the Alien RPG. And
Nice.
it's fairly simplistic, but it really does it has a lot of opportunity built into it.
Gotcha.
Of course, you gotta really use your imagination to create those scenarios for it. But I mean, I'm all about that. So.
I mean, hey, audience, you guys are listening. There might be an Alien campaign coming up soon. Might watch one of us eat a face hugger or something.
A Dune RPG.
Wait, is Moon Girl the Dune RPG seems interesting too? Like, are they coming out with a tabletop?
There's one.
I've been hearing about that.
There is one. There's a Dune RPG
Really?
out there. Yeah.
Huh. Color me surprised. I did not know that. Oh, look at that.
And we could definitely do a Dune RPG. I think I love the world, the universe created around Dune. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I haven't taken a good look at that RPG yet. But yeah, I mean, if I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I didn't know there was one coming out. I knew there was a Dune game coming out in terms of like a video game, because I know Funcom picked up the IP for something. I believe it's something akin to Conan Exiles, which is a survival build kind of game for those of you guys who don't know. But before we get too much off topic here, I mean, yeah, what you said is kind of spot on, Greg. Now you have, especially going back to the talk, where, and for me, I feel this is especially important for tabletop games, where obviously you have the mechanical things that that make sense for the world, or the scenario that you're building. Obviously, those have to make sense. But here's, in the tabletop universe and board games, where the theme, and themes are everything from color to dialogue, to the shapes. I mean, apparently, according to Sarah Ship, there is a noticeable difference between, and I'm just using this as an example, between metal, tokens and like the poker chip things that you get with certain games. Like some games use actual like metal tokens, and it's a noticeable different reaction from the players when these companies are doing testing and beta testing these things with regards to their reaction towards the game and their what's the word, kind of enthusiasm and involvement in it when they're using specific materials and colors and things like that. And that all goes back to resonance and theme, which is drastically, at least in my opinion, more important when you're doing something like a board game or a tabletop game, because you don't have I mean, to put it simply, you don't have the ooh and ah of the effects that you have with a video game. So you have to rely more on the way things are presented, the colors used. We'll go back to D&D, where the layout of the player's handbook, the font, the art that accompanies each page, and the way they break out the classes and things like that. Obviously, following those design principles where it makes sense, it follows a natural flow and progression. But I mean, it honestly, as listening to her discussion in her talk, it was surprising that something as simple as what color you decide can have such what color is decided on has such an effect on players and whether or not they're going to enjoy the game. That was actually really surprising to hear.
Wait, that all kind of works back into pretty much just color theory and how people interpret the emotional responses to colors. Like for us, in America, we Like if there's the color red, sometimes that can mean like a hospital, but that could also mean blood, so danger. Red is most often danger,
Yeah.
and so
Fun.
choosing the right colors to present the idea of what you want to put with the mechanic helps that just click with people.
Hmm.
I'm an old school guy. It goes back to the whole driver's license. Red means give it some more gas, right?
That's what yellow means.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Put your foot down.
Don't take driving advice from us, by the way.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah, but one thing that you touched on a bit before, because you were talking about how board games don't have like the special effects, they don't have like the advantage of say sound to kind of help sell that theme that
Yeah.
board games do. But you did touch on it briefly before, which is one advantage that the video games don't have, and that is the sense of touch. Because you talked briefly before about how about the use of like metal tokens instead of like basic plastic ones, and what a difference that can make. And mainly just the weight, because if you're playing a game about like trading and you have like money that's represented by these metal tokens, when you hold them in your hand, there's a lot more weight into that than if they were just made out of plastic, which helps kind of sell how important your money in this game
that is exactly. It helps sell that. Again, if trading is that part of it, or even if it's not, like, obviously if you have tokens or money or what have you, or things to, pieces to trade, obviously trading is going to be a part of it. But whatever that is, yeah, like that weight, you put it perfectly. That weight kind of subconsciously will trigger in the player's mind, like, hey, this is important. Like, obviously the mechanics are going to reinforce that, and the explanation, the basically how to play is going to reinforce that. But having that physical weight in your hand definitely will stick. I think, honestly, now that I think about it, I think that's why they implemented vibrations in the controllers. When you get shot or blown up or whatever in a game, or something explosive happens, that vibration that you have in your controller kind of pulls you into that. Because you can see it on, it's kind of like a movie. You can see a guy get shot or get blown up, or something major happens, but you're kind of removed from that. Even if you have the surround sound thing going on, you're kind of removed from that because you don't feel it, so to speak. But and that's why these kind of elements of theme and uh, how they're implemented in a board game or a tabletop, any tabletop game, because board games are tabletop games, but any game that's more of an analog nature like that, it's more important, like having that distinction and making sure that you as the designer are very, very keyed into that, because that can make or break a game for a lot of people. I mean, another example is the Monopoly pieces. Those are also made of metal, so those pieces, like, we subconsciously know these are important. But on the like that they hit that mark, but on the other side, they make no goddamn sense.
Yeah, like
They
the
make,
weight.
as a
The weight
thimble,
is good.
and,
Yeah, they
and,
just
a, and
use
a
random
hat,
objects.
they're just
A
random
dog.
things. Yeah, dog.
Yeah.
I think the only one that kind of makes sense to me is a car. You know what I mean? You're driving from one
Yeah.
property to another.
I mean,
Kind of,
maybe the top hat, since the Monopoly guy kind of has the top hat going of his own.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and top hats are for fancy people, and
There
playing
is-
Monopoly, it's a money guy.
There is actually a little bit of a story behind that, though, because I mean,
Oh, okay. Go into it.
well, I don't exactly know the story, but I mean, Monopoly is an old game. And at the time that game was created, those pieces were made to represent the titans of industry at the time. So you have weapons industry, the military
Cannon.
complex. You have the auto industry. You have that's why that stuff was that way. The game creator wanted to represent, basically the top dogs basically at the time. And the way he chose to do that was through something to represent each titan of industry. The car was basically Henry Ford. And that was the methodology that was used in that, is because then people could relate to it when they made the game, because those people were known as,
the top.
Right.
The top 1%.
They were the richest, most powerful people in the world. So who wouldn't want to be,
Yeah, we wouldn't want to be Vanderbilt or
right.
Carnegie or anything like that. Fun fact, and this is a little bit of a tangent. I watched someone basically calculate, I think it was Carnegie's or Vanderbilt's wealth. I think it was Vanderbilt. And accounting for inflation and all that stuff today, his wealth would be about over $300 billion.
God, what the hell?
That's how just wealthy the man was. 300 billion.
But
that's ridiculous. But anyway, off that tangent.
Yeah, I mean, Monopoly is actually an interesting look into game design, and even like just the idea right now of thematic resonance, because like as I've gone throughout my college experience learning game design, Monopoly has actually come up quite a few times, and pretty much how it was designed to be a little unfair, because and that works with the theme of essentially the rich get richer, and that is fully designed into the way that Monopoly as the game works. Because once you start getting ahead and you start, putting properties on your places, and someone else starts falling behind, it's almost impossible to recover from that. You're going to keep on making more money. They're going to keep on losing more money. And that's the idea of essentially in the business landscape creating a monopoly. You come to own everything and everyone else gets shut down. And that's the way the game works as well.
Yeah, I mean the creator knew what they were doing.
Yeah, so it's weird to think
like Greg
about
said,
it.
they were definitely talking to the time period.
Yeah. So it's weird to think about it, but it is designed to be an unfair game. Like if you were to look at it purely from a mechanical standpoint, you might look at it and be like, well, this thing sucks. This way, only one person is going to be having fun, and the rest of them are going to be having a terrible
Suffer.
time.
Yeah.
Suffer.
That's almost the point in why the game was made that way. It's
At
an
the end-
interesting look.
At the end, only one can win. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Most board games are exactly like that, though. That's really, there's very few that are there can be only one. Absolutely. They're all Highlander style,
Yeah, seriously.
but most of your board games, especially, well, my era, basically, like Stratego, Monopoly, Life,
Risk.
I think, Risk, absolutely. I love the game of Risk, but
Same.
it literally is. I mean, there's a winner and there's losers, and that's the unfortunate part is that doesn't necessarily fit in our vocabulary anymore. But
someone's got to win, someone's got to lose.
Yeah, it's the competitive nature. That's the thing. I mean, you look at the, everything we look at in games, sports, for instance, because they're games. Someone wins and someone loses. I mean, you don't, if you got two teams, you don't both walk away with a win. That's the competitive nature of it.
Yeah, and that's a kind of important part of designing a game, whether it's competitive or single player or cooperative, whatever. You don't have to pit the people against each other, but one of the important things is that there is there are stakes, essentially.
What's the
And I
So
think
there's the risk of failure is part of what makes playing the game interesting. Because, like,
right?
I mean, if you're playing a game and you're like say you're playing D&D and you start at a campaign that starts at level 1, but your character's level 20 with all this like incredible gear, so it's practically impossible for you to like be in any real danger. Like, I mean, unless you're just a person who's all about just that power fantasy. As far as gameplay goes, like that's not fun.
no,
There's no
it's gonna be
there's no
boring.
challenge there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, the good with the games and where they have come to now, the really good thing is that development of story and being able to, with the intention of building a theme that allows everybody who partakes of the game to have their own level of creativity. And the game itself is not necessarily most games. I mean, there are some games out there that are really fun. I'm just going to give you for example, and it's a semblance of a TTRPG. It's really kind of a board game TTRPG, but Blood Bowl is one. That, I mean, that game's all about it's somebody wins and somebody loses. That's what it's about. It's just you can use whatever setting. Generally, the setting is going to be the Warhammer 40,000 setting, but I mean, there's many options to that as to what you can do with that. But when you're looking at TTRPGs in general at this point, your enemy is not your fellow players. They are designed to incorporate teamwork and cooperation for the most part. And I know you guys both play in campaigns that I run, so that's hard to imagine me saying that. But but that's the idea is, incorporating that teamwork and cooperation, giving people an opportunity to build a story together, and each from the eyes of their own character. And that's my takeaway from this material that we're referencing today, when it comes to that theme piece and building in the resonance, because it is one thing for players, and we all enjoy the competitive nature. I think even the most passive of us, if they're playing a game of cards or whatever, I mean, you're sitting there to have fun, but it's a whole lot more fun if you're actually winning than it is if you are losing, and
that's the thing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, exactly. As long as you're not playing with, people who are sore losers, you win some, you lose some. You just take it for what it is. It's a game. We're not, this isn't, it doesn't, just because we're rolling some dice and I beat you at dice doesn't mean anything. It means I beat you at dice. Luck was with me this time. I mean, it's probably maybe going to be with you next time,
Yeah.
No, that thought, I mean, I do want to put a little bit of a counterpoint to that, because where a person has fun on the win to lose scale, it is of course somewhat subjective, because everyone else has their own enjoyment of things. Because like as we talked about before, if things are too easy, then that gets boring. So even if you're winning, you can probably get pretty bored of the game. But like, it kind of goes back to the idea of the flow state being a balance between challenge and skill level. Because if your skill is too high for the challenge, that you just breeze through it so easily, that gets boring. But if the challenge is too great for your skill level, that can get frustrating. And so there's that sweet spot of, I think the greatest enjoyment comes when you just barely win. Because then you could feel like your choices that you made were exactly what got you through that tight spot. And if you did something differently, you may have lost. I also think that there's enjoyment in just barely losing, because that allows you the opportunity to look at yourself and be like, or look at how you played the game and be like, all right, what did I do wrong? And that can provide with you that clear way to improve, as opposed to just getting absolutely curb stomped into the ground. And it's like, I don't know. It's a lot harder to tell what went wrong other than just like it was just bad from the start.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's about getting that sweet spot rather than just plainly winning or losing. I mean, obviously people like winning more than losing, but if they win too easily, that's that
You want
that's
to
not going
feel
to hold their
you
interest too
earned the
long.
victory. You know, you want to feel like you earned the victory.
Yeah,
But
like, think
Old
of-
Man Garrus says, play a game of diplomacy. You'll find out who's a sore loser and who's a good gamer. Since there's a story there, Garrus, and if you're willing to, I would like you to share it, because I've never actually played diplomacy, so I'm interested to hear this one.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of just playing Blood Bowl, as Greg was bringing up, because that can be that's a game that tests how gracefully you can lose.
Can lose.
Because it's a Blood Bowl, for those who don't know, it's very, while there is a lot of like tactical decision making on your part, it is also very RNG reliant based on how you roll, and the consequences of failing a roll can be very damning.
Oof.
So sometimes you could play your best game ever, but if you just miss that one roll, then everything falls apart, and that's the test
it.
right there. It's like, can you take this on? Can you take this blow on the chin and just keep on going through it, or is it gonna break you? And Blood Bowl it's the game that I've never met a person who doesn't that doesn't have some level of hatred towards it. Even the ones that do love it, there's still a love-hate relationship for it.
I think that's Games Workshop Warhammer 40K in general, because it doesn't matter what one of those games you're playing. There is always a point in that game where you hit this certain point, and it's either I got this or everything's going to be downhill from here, and you're just
it's a roller coaster. It's got high highs and low lows.
Low lows,
when
yeah.
things are going well, you're having so much fun.
That is Blood Bowl in a nutshell right there, because it's just you get to a point in that game where you just it's what way it's going, and if you're if you're on the bottom end of it, it's like, okay, this sucks, but I got to play out the rest of this, so I'm going to make it as fun and painful as I possibly can. I'm just going to throw everything.
I mean,
yeah,
that kind of sounds like the
I'm gonna foul all your players last turn.
Board game stores over 20 years. Old Man Garrett says lots of stories of diplomacy owned through board game stores for over 20 years. So a lot of board games. Man, go ahead, share one, please. I guess this is a talk really right up your alley, considering we're talking about tabletop and board games.
Might have to get you on the show, Garrus.
For real.
I can actually shed a little bit of light on the diplomacy game for those who are not familiar with that game. It is set in the European theater, essentially around World War II. And you take on the aspect of the different Axis and allied nations.
Okay.
And then essentially you are if it's the one I'm thinking of, Garrus, you basically control that nation. And you have resources. It's kind of finite in there. You have resources, you have control points, and the idea is to work together with the other nations, form your own little teams and whatnot, and essentially conquer Europe.
Gosh.
And I think there are variations of that. It was not just Europe. I think there was one made that was based on colonial United States, and I think there was one that was kind of following there was for a while there was, through a lot of the video games piece, there was a
Mhm.
lot of different, like Shogun Total War, so I think they made a version
Oh yeah,
of
the Total War
Diplomacy.
series and
Yeah,
stuff.
I think there's a version
Okay,
of
yeah.
Diplomacy for Japan, feudal Japan.
Yeah, I actually have. I'm pretty sure I actually have those games. I have a number of those games. I had a friend of mine who really, really liked them, um, but he didn't have a computer to run it.
Uh-oh.
Did we just lose Rob?
I think we did.
But I did. So he.
There he is.
I think his internet might be having a bit of a spat right now.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah.
Well, keep going.
But yeah. So sorry, didn't mean to drop out like that. I guess. But yeah, old man Garrus said you have to make agreements with other countries as to who to attack, defend, share resources. Very cutthroat. This happens in real time, typically in a large area where people can move around and walk and talk. Lots of notes being passed, agreements being. Damn, that sounds shady as shit. That sounds really, really cutthroat. Damn.
Yeah, what
It's
last
like one of those social deception games,
last
which those always have good stories.
last time I played that, we did it. We did it as a social game at Beloit University, Beloit, Wisconsin. But we did one move a day, so everybody had to have their written out moves done. I think it was by 6:00 in the afternoon, and then we would get together at 8. So the game master would actually go through and the game master would actually go through and do all the moves on the board based on what we turned into him, and then we'd all meet at 8 and see what the results were. And it was very good. It was very, doing that one turn a day piece. It really kind of left you with a true sense of, hey, if somebody decided to stab you in the back, you're like, I got the next
You would
24
really
hours to really hammer on this guy, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh my.
Damn.
A big tale from Old Man Garrus. Worst
Seriously.
case, a couple who were, past tense, broke a non-aggression pact, and he attacked her country, taking her out of the picture. She blew up, taking it very personal, and after fighting and arguing in public, called off the engagement. Oh
Damn.
my god!
Wow,
Damn.
she's
Okay.
no. Hopefully he got the ring back. No.
That's man. That must have been an awkward one to be there for.
Oh yeah, don't joke. I kind of want to play this game now. So apparently, you'll have to pass notes. People text each other, leave hints, and backstab each other like crazy. Apparently, I kind of want to play this game now.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a lot of fun stories that come out of social deception games. I mean, that's part of why, like, as almost cringe as the game has become, it blew up majorly Among Us, which is that's a social deception game.
Mhm.
Where if you're the imposter, you try to kill someone and then during the meetings completely bullshit your way out of it. And yeah, sometimes you gaslight people or throw others under the bus, and it's like, yeah, like it's the type of game. It's like the point is to just
Just stab people in the back.
backstabbing.
Yeah, just win.
Ooh, from Moon Girl, Secret Hitler's like that too. Yes,
Secret Hitler.
Yeah, that is another
what's
social
that?
deception game.
I know, Piper.
I used to watch people play that game. I can't quite remember how that works,
Secret
but
Hitler.
it is.
I've never played that one.
It is another of that vein where I think, if I remember right, there is one person who is the Secret Hitler, and you have, and it works kind of similarly to Among Us, where people will have like meetings and try to vote people off who they think is the bad actor. The Secret Hitler isn't alone. I know there are some roles that are there, meant to support the secret Hitler, though if I remember right, they don't know exactly who it is either, but they have to try to figure out and cover for them. While the I guess the normal people are trying to, their goal is to vote out the secret Hitler,
Vote out
get
the
rid of
secret
him.
Hitler.
It's another. I mean, it's just social deception games in general
Yeah,
are just
yeah. They
they're
are
just
really
really
fun.
good times. Yeah,
Yeah, you got to be good at bullshitting. Gotta
yeah.
be good at bullshitting. Um,
You can figure out
Well,
how good of a liar your friend
Man.
is.
I would suck at that game then.
yeah, bullshit, Greg. we know the truth. But yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, guys. Kind of to circle back to the topic at hand, like all of these things. I mean, you can see like Old Man Garris's story about the couple that got basically unengaged over a game. I mean, that comes into play with resonance and making a game that sticks, where the mechanics and the theme and the setting matter. And you didn't need fancy graphics or anything like that for this. You just needed some good design, and apparently a backstabbing partner who was like, "Nah, I'm taking that."
Well, yeah, like
um,
that thematic resonance is like it's present just in the name Secret Hitler, in the way that you play the game, because there
yeah,
is the Hitler and he wants to stay secret, and that's how the game is played. So it's like already there's some of that thematic resonance where the gameplay matches what the theme of the game is.
Right.
yeah, same thing. We going back to diplomacy. Everybody was wheeling and dealing, and some people were making some deals over here, and getting ready to stab this person in the back and that person in the back, and I'm sure that guy wasn't planning to get unengaged and sleep on the couch, but hey, that's it happening. Jesus.
No, that actually makes me wonder
That's rough.
if anyone has ever played one of those games with a friend as a way to try to break the friendship off. Playing a game like that, or like Mario Party, is pretty infamous, especially
it's another one. Yeah,
the earlier ones, especially. I recently watched some videos of people going back and playing the early Mario Party games. Those were brutal.
yeah.
And friendship ending stuff.
Absolutely. I couldn't imagine. I mean,
okay, he's in a much better place. Well, I guess he won out in the end both times.
well, there you go.
But yeah, Mario Kart, yeah, or Super Smash Bros. Those are definitely friendship enders right there. Another game that I remember playing very vividly was Axis and Allies. Oof, that definitely left a couple of people
Little salty.
Oh yeah. Me and a buddy of mine, we were just really good at that game. It was us two against, like, I think at that point, from what I remember, it was a late night game. I think we played until the next morning, and it was like 6 of us, and it was he and I against like the 4 others. Basically, we got ganged up on. We still won. It's rough. Half-Life 2. Yeah. Excuse me.
I mean, any competitive game, you're gonna get the salt flowing.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just kind of the nature of competitive games, and why some, like, it attracts a certain people, sometimes for better or worse. But it's also why sometimes finding a good cooperative game is just very is appealing, so you can actually work with your friend instead of fighting with them in case something happens.
Yeah, I mean, but I think in terms of the tabletop games, I think D&D does that well, where you are by definition, your party is a group of people, for the most part, who are on each other's side. Now, I have played in a couple of evil campaigns where there was some backstabbing and some thievery going on. We actually ended up killing off one character at one point, but that was an agreement. Like everybody was okay with that one.
Yeah, I haven't played in any evil campaigns myself, but I've heard horror stories, and those are the types of campaigns where you got to treat it very carefully and know you've picked the right people for the campaign.
Yeah,
But
you definitely got to find the right folks for that one, because people can get a little upset.
Yeah, but for the most part, like, yeah, D&D definitely do a good job at that thematic resonance, because, like, the theme of the game is literally just a group of adventurers delving into a dungeon together. And I mean, I guess it could depend on your campaign, but that's mostly what you do. You're with your group and you're working cooperatively. You might have your spats here and there, as with any group of individuals trying to play out their power fantasies do. But I mean, if you try to like do everything on your own, you're gonna die. You know, if you know you break off from the group, find a group of enemies, and think, I can handle this on my own. Unless you're really high level for where you're at, yeah, that's probably not going to go well for you.
Nope. No, it's not. And it's not designed to. You're designed to kind of get your. I mean, by definition, the game is designed to be played cooperatively. It's not necessarily an I win kind of game. Which honestly, and I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I've heard horror stories of that very thing, where people go into D&D with that kind of mindset of, I'm going to win the game. There's really no winning D&D. Like, there's surviving D&D.
I mean, because D&D, I mean, I guess the closest thing you can get to quote unquote winning in D&D is, I guess, completing the campaign.
Yeah.
That would be the closest thing, but like for the most part, it's just survive, have fun, and don't be a dick to the other players. Out of character, at least. In character, sometimes having the asshole around can be fun.
It's
spoken
hilarious.
from someone who plays a very asshole character in one of our private games.
Yeah.
Good old Gillian.
This motherfucker sit on his ass doing a whole lot of nothing.
He's doing something while he sends everyone off to zombie apocalypse town.
Well, what about Zara?
Zara's an asshole. She's Zara? Actually one of the nicer ones.
Zara is a tiefling in our private D&D game. She's less in your face about being the asshole, and she just sort of does it.
She just sort of does it. She's pretend nice. I mean, I don't know. I think she's pretty nice.
That's where it comes down to the stand by. Yeah. Well, that's where it comes down to the. I'm gonna show a little bit of bias here, but the difference between veteran players and people that are new to the concept of TTRPGs. I think that's the big piece to it there. And I'm not saying that just because you've played for a while or whatever makes you necessarily better at playing, because I have definitely met some folks who have, apparently been playing TTRPGs for a long time, and to be quite honest with you,
they suck ass.
Don't want to play with them. Because, and most of the time, it's because they take that competitive attitude and try to apply it to a story-based game. Where they're going to win. I'm going to come in, I'm going to win this thing. And I don't know if I agree with what you were saying, Matt, about I think winning in a TTRPG, a themed game, is not, it doesn't have a sense of finality to it. Winning is subjective. It all just depends upon the individual. You know what I mean? In some games are created in the sense that winning is just, keeping your character alive long enough to get bored with it and want to move on to something else. Sometimes people create a larger story where maybe as they play something for a while, different characters kind of get added into their story. Maybe it starts with this character, and then the story expands and expands and expands. Before you know it, you have a whole cast of characters that are all characters that you play in one campaign or another, or maybe multiple campaigns, and you've now built this whole story arc with all of these characters being part of it, just from their different themes, basically. And you see a lot of that with people who... here's the thing. TTRPGs are addictive.
They are.
even the people that I have met that have been extremely resistant up front because they just don't understand the idea of playing a game that's more about storytelling. Because, the idea of a game is you get to the end, you win. And that's not what it's about. Yes, Piper, you are the master of having a cast of characters from all over hell and back. And building them all together. Fantastic about that as well. But yeah, it's very easy once you get into the storytelling world. It's, for lack of a better way to explain it. It's very easy to begin to really enjoy that. And, if you create a character with the idea of, I want to see where I can go with this, then you're probably going to be engaged in TTRPGs, role-playing games, for a very long time. Just simply because there's a high level of enjoyment, especially if it's something that resonates with you. There's a high level of enjoyment that can be gathered from it, and then it's a, there's the interactive experience of being able to tell that story alongside other people who are also telling a story. And your stories interact with each other. So it's not completely just coming out of your head. If that's what you want to do, then write a book. But you're actually developing that story based on what, not just what you're doing or what your character's doing, but you're developing that story based off of what the other characters are doing and how you interact with those characters. I'll tell you, some of the... I'm sorry, Matt, I just get this last part out and all yours. Some of the most exciting experiences I've had in RPGs are actually playing with some of those characters that we were just talking about a little bit ago. Those players that you're like, I don't really want to play with them. But they throw in an aspect to the game which really gives you an opportunity to challenge your own character and to create some really interesting story around that. All yours, man.
Oh, no. I mean, it's... in TTRPGs, at least, it's collaborative storytelling, which, sometimes, so it's, you can't tell the story by yourself. And I think it does have some pros and some cons. Like, a lot of times, the con is that you try to tell a character with your story, or if you're the GM trying to tell a story just in general, the others can always do something to throw that completely off course. Trying to have a solid plan is rarely going to happen unless you really force it in an unnatural way.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that also leans into one of the strengths of the TTRPG collaborative storytelling, in that, like, the unexpected can happen a lot. and it's like sometimes if you're able to roll with the unexpected developments, you're able to tell a story and go places with your character you never thought they'd end up going. And that's like that's one of the biggest strengths of it. So like, like one character that I made a long time ago in the Elder Scrolls world was a wonderful little cat named Booty, and I built him to be as pathetic as possible. Like seriously, he was small, skinny. I created the character to have like facial features that looked like a constant frown. He was amazing. One of my greatest creations that always looked just pathetic. In fact, in the guild we had, he became known as the sad cat. Yet
Yep.
one of the things I never saw coming was the fact that as time went on, despite him being like frail, he eventually became known as one of like the guild's magical powerhouses and like a force to be reckoned with.
Booty the
Despite
sad cat.
yeah, so it is very interesting watching this pathetic cat just like the
Grow.
reputation he eventually grew as this like
Yep.
dangerous person, and how he's like so meek about it. The fact that he was always so afraid of everything, yet people started calling him the Fearless, which just made the easy joke of saying the Fearless trembles in reaction to scary things going on.
Yep.
But
I
that's
remember those days.
But yeah, that's like one of those real powers of a TTRPG, or I guess any role-playing game, is that sometimes things go in a different direction than you first intended, but it can turn out hilarious. I made a joke character with this cat, and he became one of the like most beloved characters in the whole guild, and like serious stories being told with him definitely went way farther than I ever expected it to.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that again that circles back to the whole resonance piece, and again using D&D as an example, that collaborative storytelling, that's part of the resonance. That's part of the the that kind of that theme that you're trying to build of telling that storytelling, that piece. Obviously, with regards to D&D, it's through multiple characters and multiple players' eyes and points of view. But when it comes together well, and you have that really great story piece that's told, and you have those memories that you were just talking about, and that we all have from our private games, and even the BOR, which is on Friday. We'll talk about that in a minute. um, but yeah, you have those elements that are lasting, and memorable, and they stick. As Sarah Ship says, you want that stuff to stick. You want to create an environment, both mechanically and thematically, that is going to be memorable to the players that play the game. Whether it's a one-off, like Monopoly, because I remember playing Monopoly with my family, obviously, and I'm pretty sure we've all done it, where you get into not legitimate fights. Sometimes those can happen, but you get into like little tiffs and stuff, and it's more for fun, but you remember them. Although I don't ever remember anyone getting unengaged, um, because of Monopoly. This diplomacy thing, I'm gonna have to look that up. That sticks. I gotta check that one out.
Yeah, and I guess going back a bit to Sarah Ship's formula for resonance. Like we've talked about, make sure that the mechanics and theme line up to create that resonance. With the idea of the familiarity and unexpectedness working together, pretty much where you follow things that make sense in established conventions, and then the unexpectedness where you break away from those conventions and do something unique. The third part that she talked about was chaff, which is something that detracts from resonance. And as she puts it, chaff is like pretty much things that are not needed to reinforce the core of the theme.
Yeah.
So, you know, like every detail that you add to the game, you know, whether it's a mechanic or a story bit, they should reinforce that core theme.
Mhm.
And if they don't, you might need to consider getting rid of it. Because, like, imagine you're playing a game about farming, and that's like everything in the game is about farming, and you're doing all that stuff. But then there's this weird bit off to the side where it's like, I don't know, you have to try to think of a just off the handle example. You know, I'll say it. Like, let's say there's a weird platforming section in order to get like some bonus, I don't know, seeds,
Mhm.
and it's like, where does that make sense? You know, why is there this weird platforming section in my farming game?
Mm-hmm.
That's chaff. It doesn't line up with the core theme of what's going on, and it comes off as more of a gimmick than anything that is fully integrated.
Yeah.
So
So-
that's something that you may very well do with just removing.
So mixing Cyberpunk with Resident Evil, that's kind of chaffy too, right?
I wouldn't say that.
I think you managed to make it work. For reference, in our private Cyberpunk game that Greg also DMs, he did a bit that was Resident Evil inspired. Essentially, like, kind of think like a small version of Raccoon City out in the Badlands, where there were zombies, a secret underground lab with all sorts of weird stuff in it. Which, yeah, it's a little not really what Cyberpunk usually does, but he managed to make it a lot of fun, and it didn't go too ridiculous into
Yeah,
the
it
Resident
hit
Evil
right. Yeah, it landed very well.
Yeah.
It didn't turn
So-
the Cyberpunk world into the zombie apocalypse. So
No.
Now, you didn't go too far in it, which I think was probably the right way to go. It's not like Resident Evil bosses where they're like in a person shape, and then all of a sudden they somehow expand to the size of like several houses
right.
through like whatever new type of infection that game is about. And it's like,
Yeah.
in the games, I guess it's one of those situations where, like, sometimes if it's fun, don't think about it too hard. Because, like, in Resident Evil, when the boss character turns into a monster and they're like 20 times the size that they originally were, that doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it's a boss fight. It's exciting. Try not to think about it too hard. and I think I guess that's the suspension of disbelief part, where sometimes things may not make perfect realistic sense, but if it makes for the fun game, then people are likely to kind of just overlook this weird bit.
Sometimes it's two things with this. Sometimes it is nice. I say nice to come up with an explanation for those things that may test your idea of what's reality is, because the reality may be different in your theme or in your world. And other times it's not getting too caught up in your lore is really important as well, because that's kind of like it can be like walking into quicksand. because once you get going too much into defining all the characteristics of the story and building out that lore piece and trying to make everything make sense, you almost you get sucked into that, where that's all you do is try and work out the lore to explain all the things way too deep.
Yeah, and a lot of times that can end up ruining things. Like, I guess probably the most famous example is Star Wars, the midichlorians bit. Like, no one ever really wanted the Force to be explained that way because it's supposed to be this
It's the
supernatural,
Force.
mystical thing. Like, it's
Mhm.
not supposed to be something that can be so easily explained, much less in any kind of scientific way. That's the point. It's a fantastical element in this otherwise sci-fi story. And that's what made the Force as a concept so, interesting. And so by trying to explain it away in a logical sense like that, like not in a spiritual sense, which is what the Force is supposed to be about, but in a logical sense, that's when they fell from the theme of what the Force in Star Wars is even about. And that's why no one liked the midichlorians bit. If they had a more spiritual explanation of the Force, then people would explain that because that's what the Force is all about.
Right.
But that's not how they chose to explain where the Force comes from. They did something else. No one liked it. Sometimes things don't need to be explained. That's what I'm trying to say. Especially if it's a fantastical element. Sometimes you just put it out there, people accept it as part of the world, and leave it at that, man. Magic is magic for a reason.
Yeah.
Yep. And the people that want that kind of definition, I mean, that's part of building that open piece to your world is, if you want that kind of definition, no matter what the world is, the game should allow for you to create it. Homebrew it. If you want to explain what it is, go ahead, go for it. Explain what it is in your world. The lore of the game's the lore of the game. Exactly, and that's completely okay. And you can share that. You can talk about that. That can become your world. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I know some folks. I know some streamers actually that have built a massive world in that sense, using core mechanics and lore from a game series. And then it's a game series that is no longer being supported, so it's an older version of a long running game. And they have built out, taken those core mechanics, that core lore, and then built out their own world, and it's a very expanded world. And that's awesome. More power to you. Run with it.
Yeah, and honestly, that can sometimes be a very big power in regards to like some storytelling, leaving some room for people to come up with their own versions.
Mhm.
Like, I guess if this is delving a bit back into video games and away from, tabletop or analog games, but like, From Software's games, like the Souls series and Elden Ring, those are always left intentionally vague and difficult to piece together because it's intended that they get people to work that out themselves. People will. It drives conversation about the game and how they piece together the story and how they fill in the holes that are intentionally left with their own interpretations of what happened.
Mhm.
And that's why, like, like on YouTube, there are entire channels, successful ones too, that are dedicated to unraveling the story of these games and like having their own interpretations of what happened here. Like Vadi Vidya is one example. He's he made quite a lot of success off the Dark Souls series.
Mhm.
And let's see, how many subscribers does the guy have? 2.65 million, so almost 3 million. And his thing was just talking about Dark Souls story, because it was Dark Souls and From Software, the way they craft their stories
Mhm.
are intended for people to do this sort of thing, to have that conversation.
Create that world. Absolutely. And that's TTRPGs, that's honestly, that's what they're all about. Now some people, are very, very, it has to be lore specific. It has to be in, if it's not in the canon versus non-canon. I get it. And I don't like to personally completely run away from the theme of a game as it was intended to be. But I'm going to make my own world out of it. If I'm running the game or even a player in the game. Now, obviously, I'm going to follow the mechanics of the game and whatever the GM wants to, because they're the one that's moderating and guiding the world. But when it comes to my game, a game that I'm running, it can go wherever the players want to go. And if you want to go somewhere that's completely outside of what it currently exists in the rules, we can do that. I'm always going to reference back to the lore of the game, but we can create our own lore. We can create our own story, and expand upon what is already there. We're not going to change. I personally am not going to change what's already there. That lore's, it was written by the creators of the game. I'm going to expand upon it, but not try to go back and say, well, they were wrong. This is what happened. No, that's, that's my personal preference. And especially if it's a game that I feel was well designed in that sense, and it's something that I resonate with. I'm not gonna, if it not broken, don't fix it type of thing. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to expand upon it. And I think that games need to be created that way. The games need to be created with that in mind, to allow for the not just the game masters, but the characters, the players themselves, to be able to tell their story. There's an individual aspect of this that comes in. No matter anybody can make a really good game into a horrible game. They really can.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some really good storytellers out there that can take a game that's absolute garbage and make it into something very interesting. I've seen that happen before. There's a game, I've mentioned it before to you guys. There's a game called Car Wars, and it is a TTRPG. It's board game base, but it is honestly, it is a horrible game when it comes to being the story piece and all that stuff. But I played with a guy years ago. I actually ran that game for competition. Steve Jackson, yes sir, absolutely. I ran that game for competition play for the Concentric, and we did a point system thing for more of a Mad Max style. Ogre, yep. I've played that one as well. But I played that with a guy who actually was really good at taking Car Wars and making it into something interesting, adding in the actual role play aspect to it, and creating scenarios that were enjoyable to play, not just straight up battle and blow everything up, and sometimes that's fun, but I like to tell stories. And he actually created an environment where we were able to do that. We were able to tell a story. And that's those people that can do that. To me, that's the ultimate thing for the game master to look at, is to provide that atmosphere for your players to be able to tell a story. And the better the game itself is, the mechanics, the theme, all of lack of BS chaff, whatever you want to put it. The better the game is at facilitating your ability as a game master to be able to do that, to create a framework for your players to tell a great story, the better the game is. And that's this game, Car Wars, is like I was, and Ogre too. I mean, they're like a couple of really good examples of games that just were not designed for that. They're designed more along the line of Blood Bowl, where you can make a story out of that, or you can just sit down and roll dice and play the game. It's more or less just another board game, you know?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my rant.
Oh, I mean, again, all those points are literally right in line with what we were talking about. But we are coming up to time. And before we get too lost in the weeds, I do want to, first of all, thank you guys for coming out. As always, we do appreciate you guys coming and tuning in to the update log and to Friday's stream, which I will let Greg go into. Blood Bowl game about smashing and get the football. Not even score, just get the football. I've basically heard that, Garrus. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that is Blood Bowl in a nutshell right there. Unless you're playing with, it depends on what you're playing with. I'm sure if you had a couple of, sissy elven teams going after each other.
You an elf team hater. Managed to dodge through all the tackle zones, pick up the ball, pass it downfield for a one-turn touchdown.
I once played we created a what the hell? We created teams of is it brownies? Not brownies. Shoot, I forget the name of the race, but they're naturally super fast. So a buddy of mine and I created 2 teams of just these creatures and played Blood Bowl, and that was probably the most amount of fun I ever had, because you literally could move from one end of the board to the other in one turn, and we just
the skinks.
No. Quicklings. Yes.
Huh. Not familiar with that. Then again, I've only played Blood Bowl 2, so maybe that's
they're not
in one of the earlier games.
Nope. We created it. We created.
Okay, something you made yourself.
Yep.
Okay. From old man Garrus, best way to beat a team of elves in Blood Bowl: get mirrors and put them in the field. They'll all stop to look at themselves in the mirrors. You know what, man? True. If only the goblin team had like mirror goblins, that would be perfect.
Yes. All right. So we're sounds like we're coming to a close for tonight's stream. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We do have I'll turn it back to you in just a second here, Rob. We do run a Cyberpunk campaign on every Friday. Please feel free to join us and check that out. It's based off of Cyberpunk Red, but it is more or less a homebrew campaign. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Rob, while I fix Matt.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit.
It's only at the end.
But yeah, thank you for the comment, Garrus. You said good topic and conversations. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we look to do here, to bring the information to you guys and have you guys weigh in. I mean, the gaming community, again, no matter what game you play, at least in my opinion, should be collaborative. Should be everybody has a voice here and should be heard. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you guys for tuning in and saying your piece on the particular topic. I believe Greg actually put a suggestion box
I did.
in on the channel. So one thing that I do want you guys to do as our audience, if you want to hear a particular topic or have us talk about something, drop it in there. It's kind of what it's for, I guess. But yeah, tune in on Friday at 8 p.m. EST for the BOR. But unless anyone else has anything to add, that's it for tonight.
Awesome. So we're going to raid a friend of ours, Stormy D. It looks like they are playing Diablo over there tonight. I know they have a collab game going on.
Nice. Greg, before you do go, apparently the Discord invite is invalid, as per Old Man Garrus's comment.
Shoot. I will get that. I will get that fixed for you, and I will whisper it over to you. How's that sound?
All right.
Oh yeah,
cool.
Checking it now myself.
No problem.
Broken link.
Yeah, shoot.
Happens.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you for being here. Everybody have a good night.
Yeah. See you guys next time.